Now that we've talked about how oxygen and carbon dioxide are carried in the blood, I want to talk about homeostatic control of breathing. How does your body maintain homeostasis in all of your gas concentrations in your body? So I'd like you to just make a prediction. When you are exercising, what is the main stimulus that causes an increase in breathing rate? And go ahead and just make a prediction. What do you think is the main stimulus? Is it going to be a low partial pressure of oxygen in the blood, high partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the blood, or is it going to be low pH in the blood, or would it be low oxygen levels in the muscles, or high carbon dioxide in the muscles? Which of those do you think? Okay, now that you've made your prediction, let's take a look. So this is a figure that illustrates homeostasis in the blood, and you'll notice that the main focus here is homeostasis of blood pH. So that is the main stimulus that your body is paying attention to know whether you have enough oxygen. So the stimulus that eventually is going to lead you to start breathing harder is rising levels of CO2, which causes a decrease in blood pH. And remember, this is because of this equation where carbon dioxide joins with water to make carbonic acid, and that carbonic acid dissociates into hydrogen ions and bicarbonate ions. So this increase in hydrogen ions lowers the pH because pH, remember, is the negative log of the hydrogen ion concentration. So if hydrogen ion concentration increases, then pH is going to decrease. So this decreasing pH, this lower pH in the blood, is detected by sensors that are in the carotid arteries, which are these two main arteries that carry blood up to your brain. So why does it make sense that your carotid arteries are going to be particularly sensitive to pH? Well, this totally makes sense because your brain needs a lot of oxygen. And the last thing you want to do is deprive your brain of oxygen. So you want to pay attention to oxygen levels. And so what your body actually does is pays attention to pH levels in the carotid arteries and also in the aorta, which is that first main blood vessel that comes from the left side of the heart. Remember that the left ventricle pumps blood into the aorta. And a couple of the main branches from the aorta will then end up being the two carotid arteries that go through your neck and up into your head. So these are the sensors that detect that low blood pH. And as a result, then information is sent from those sensors by nerve impulses to the brain stem, the medulla oblongata. And also, if we have low pH in the blood, this will also cause a low pH in the cerebrospinal fluid, and there are sensors that detect that as well. And both of those, both of that information, both from the cerebrospinal fluid and from these carotid and aortic sensors, that information goes to the medulla. And the medulla processes that information because it is the control sensor, the control center of this feedback loop. And the medulla oblongata decides that, oh, we got to breathe faster because we got to get more oxygen and get rid of more CO2. And so it sends a message to the diaphragm, and the diaphragm then starts having a faster rate, and the rib muscles. And so as a result of sensations that come from the medulla oblongata, the diaphragm goes up and down more often, and you have a faster breathing rate. And as a result of that, you get rid of more CO2, the CO2 level decreases, and this whole reaction goes in the reverse direction. It goes back this direction, and because CO2 is gotten rid of, and so more hydrogen gets moved back through this equation and goes into water, and your blood pH goes back up to 7.4. So the main thing that your body pays attention to is this blood pH. It can also sense oxygen and carbon dioxide levels directly, but the main thing it pays attention to is this blood pH. And we haven't talked a lot about feedback in this course, but this is an example of a negative feedback loop because an original stimulus causes a response that ends up negating or neutralizing this original stimulus. So our original stimulus was that the pH goes down, and the result of this feedback is that pH goes back up to about 7.4. So this is called a negative feedback loop, and negative feedback is often used in maintaining homeostasis at normal levels. And our last slide that has to do with circulatory system is just going to be an overall check of, can you trace the pathway of carbon through the digestive system and then on through the circulatory system to the cells, and then back through the circulatory system, and finally out through the respiratory system. So if you eat a hamburger for lunch, what happens to the carbon atoms in that meat? In one of the protein molecules, what pathway does it follow as it goes through your digestive system, and how does it get converted from protein molecules to some other molecule that contains carbon, and eventually it gets absorbed into the circulatory system? What's the pathway then that molecule that used to be a protein but it's now been digested, what pathway does that molecule take until it gets to a cell somewhere in your body? And then what happens to that molecule as it gets converted to CO2? And just a hint, that would be during cellular respiration. And then as that CO2 then goes back into the bloodstream, what pathway would that follow to where it exits the body finally through the respiratory system? So can you trace that whole process? If you can follow the carbon through the digestive system, through the circulatory system to a body cell, if you can understand cellular respiration and then how that produces CO2 that then comes back through the circulatory system, back through the respiratory system and out, then you can understand a lot about how your body uses energy and how your body uses matter and metabolism, and that's like a big part of this course. So this is a good review question for you.